Okay, so I just want to chat to you all a little bit about Ganache and just the very basics of Ganache and why I use Ganache. This is just mainly if you're a complete beginner and you don't even know what Ganache is, you might not even know what buttercream is. You're just new to cake decorating and you just want to know what the basics are. Quite often in the cake world or any sort of specialised subject, people forget that people who have never made something before from cake or have never made an aeroplane or whatever, they don't know the basics and how it all works. The Ganache, it's just such a good product to use. So if you're a complete beginner to cake decorating, Ganache is the foundations to a beautiful cake. When you use Ganache, it's so simple to make up. Once you spread it over your cake, so you've got a square cake or a round cake, once you learn how to do the technique of covering it and coating it in Ganache and leaving it to set, it's going to give the foundation to get a nice, beautiful, smooth cake, wedding cake, celebration cake, doesn't matter. So I always say it's like building a house. If you get the foundations right, i.e. the Ganache, smooth over the cake, then the house is going to look lovely when it's finished. Where if you've got a wobbly foundation, you're going to have a wobbly house. And the exact same with the cake. Wobbly cake to start with, when you go to cover it over the top, the sugar paste is going to look horrendous. So the same with Ganache. And Ganache isn't just for the professional. For instance, if you're a busy housewife or you've got a full-time job, part-time job, and you've got lots of cakes, you're starting to get a good name for yourself because you're using Ganache and everyone likes the taste of your cake, then Ganache the cake, bake the cake off, Ganache the cake, do a 3-tier cake, have it all ganached, and then put it in a box and pop it in a chest freezer. And then when it comes to the week of actually making the cake, bring the cake out of the freezer the night before, and then once it chills out, you can just cover the sugar paste and finish it off. So as a home baker, it's great for that. You can just pop it in the freezer and bring it back out when you need to use it. But then for a professional, when we had the cake shop, you could actually double your quantity. So we were doing 12 wedding cakes a week, buttercream, and then we changed over to Ganache. We're actually doing 24 cakes a week with the same number of staff. So it's great for the home baker and for the professional, purely all round. I always say once you go to Ganache, you'll never go back to buttercream. So I'm just going to give you sort of a little bit of history of why I use Ganache. Way back when I first started cake decorating, I used buttercream, and buttercream is lovely. It tastes nice and light. The problem is when temperature changes and it's really warm, sometimes the buttercream can melt very quickly. So sometimes you've got to add some tricks into it, or shortening, or Crisco, just to give it a bit more structure. The problem is it doesn't taste as nice with especially in the UK, maybe not so much for people abroad, but in the UK they don't really like the shortening. So I had a lot of problems with when I used to have a stacked wedding cake. You'd have to get little bellies that used to arrive around the side of the cake, so the sugar paste would bulge out, and it used to frustrate me all the time. And then I discovered when I had an employee who worked for me, Liz, from Australia, and we use Ganache for chocolate cakes, but we never use Ganache for iced cakes. And she says, Paul, why don't you use the Ganache? It's much stronger. And it got me sort of thinking. I thought, how can you use dark chocolate and then ice a cake with white sugar paste? But actually, when you do it, you can't tell the difference. If you have a buttercream cake and a Ganache cake, when you ice the two, one does look whiter than the other one. But if you don't put one next to one, you would never know the difference. And that's when we sort of changed over to using Ganache. And what Ganache does is it sets fast. So even the white Ganache does set faster than using a buttercream. And all it is, it's double cream, or you can actually use UHT cream or single cream to make it. And I have used artificial cream, and it does work also with it. And it's cream and chocolate mixed together, keeping it basic. Once it sets in the fridge, you can then use it as a foundation to build a nice, smooth, perfect cake for then applying your sugar paste and your fondant. Now, in the old days, we used to do a lot of fruit cakes with marzipan, and you put a thin layer of marzipan over the top of the fruit cake, which gave it a nice, smooth finish. And then that allowed you to then ice the cake with sugar paste to get lovely sharp-edged wedding cake. Ganache is very similar to that, where you apply the Ganache onto a sponge cake. You can do it in a chocolate, toffee, lemon, any sponge cake, doesn't matter. You just use a different coloured Ganache, milk dark or white, depending on the type of sponge you've got. For instance, if it's a vanilla sponge, you would use white chocolate Ganache. And it just gives you the same form as marzipan. So when you put it on and you put it in the fridge, you bring it out, it's set and it's got a nice firm finish. So when you're using your smoothers on the cake, you can put pressure on the cake and the cake's not going to move. where quite often when you've got a sugar paste cake, you're icing a cake with buttercream, when you're putting the pressure on to try and get a smooth finish, the cake moves, and what finds you work this side and then you have to change and work that side, and you don't really get anywhere. Where with Ganache, it just helps to get a nice professional crisp finish. And then when you come to finish and stack the cake, it's a solid cake to stack. And then when you come to deliver the cake, that you know the Ganache cake in the back is going to be the one that's going to be solid, where possibly the one that's got the buttercream has got a little bit more movement in it, so you've got a little bit more of a risk. Now, I'm not anti-buttercream in any way, shape or form. It's just when I changed over to using Ganache, I was able to do a lot more cakes much faster. So I could Ganache, pop all the cakes in the fridge, bring the cakes out of the fridge and ice them the same day, and then the next day stack and finish the cakes. Where with the buttercream, you had to sort of buttercream one day, then for a wedding cake, sometimes a thin layer of marzipan over the top, so that'd be your second day, and then the third day then put your sugar paste on, and then the fourth day stack the cake. So it was a lot more time consuming to get a really sharp finish with the buttercream, using pure buttercream, not the buttercream with the white fat in it. That's a different story. You can do it faster that way. You're just compromising on the taste ever so slightly for that. So Ganache, it is my favourite product for making cakes. You've got the milk dark and the white chocolate Ganache. It's just, if you're new to cake decorating, give it a shot. You know, you just go down to the supermarket, buy cheap chocolates. You don't have to buy expensive stuff to start with. Buy your cream, follow the recipe on the website to make Ganache, and give it a shot. And I always get feedback from a lot of students when they come to order, when they come to do the course, and then they'll maybe say afterwards, "Oh, I'm back to using buttercream again because my customers prefer jam buttercream." But when I go back to them, most of them haven't actually allowed their customers to have a taste of it. Because if you just tell someone about it, they go, "Oh, chocolate on a cake, oh, I don't want that. I want a Victoria sponge with jam buttercream." They're not going to even give it a shot. So what you should do is just bake off some cake and do some jam buttercream and do some jam and white chocolate. Do a chocolate cake with cocoa butter buttercream, and then do one with your Ganache, milk chocolate Ganache. And just let the customer decide. Now you tell the customer this one's going to be 10% more expensive than this one, but then there's your taste. And let them taste it, and guaranteed that the ones, when they try the Ganache ones, they'll love it absolutely, hands down. We used to do the cake shows in Edinburgh and Glasgow. We used to do one with the Bailey's Irish cream through it. And people would go around all the cake shows, and they would try cake, and they come to our stand and go, "Oh, I've had enough cake. You know, please just try a little bit." And guaranteed they would put the cake in their mouth, they would taste the Baileys, they would taste the Ganache, and then they would just hand you over £100 deposit for their wedding cake. It was really like that. Just because your cake tastes just a little bit different, because everyone's doing buttercream, okay? So really give it a shot. I feel like I'm a salesman for Ganache, but it's just so simple to make as well. There's no mess. When you're making buttercream, you've got to soften the butter, mix it up, add icing sugar. Icing sugar goes all over the kitchen. With this, you just pop your cream in the pan, bring it to the boil, pour it over your chocolate, mix it with a wooden spoon, made. That's it, as easy as that. Once it's in the fridge, you can use it whenever you want. So it's as simple as that. And also for cupcakes, we used to have the Cupcake Cafe Bar in West Lothian, and most of the cakes, we did do buttercream ones, but most of the cakes were a Ganache base. And I think that was a success to our cafe. It wasn't really a cupcake, it was more just a really luxury little cake with Ganache on top. And the price was expensive. It was about £3 for one cupcake with a swirl of Ganache on top. But we're selling about 2,000 a week, and I totally put that down to it was the Ganache on top of the cakes, because it just had a little bit of luxury to it. So just keeping it very simple. Ganache just gives you a nice neat finish, and it's what you put over the cake to get a nice smooth finish before you then put the sugar paste on, rather than just put the buttercream on and hope that the sugar paste is going to neaten it up. So it's all about the foundations with Ganache. If you get your Ganache on nice and neat, you know your sugar paste is going to be nice and neat. If you slapdash the Ganache on, your cake's going to be slapdash by the time it's finished. So it's a bit of an art in itself to Ganache a cake, but once you've learned the art of ganaching, you won't go back to doing anything else. So hopefully this has been beneficial, and please give it a shot. Don't be scared of Ganache. There's so many people scared of Ganache because it's chocolate, but chocolate's just got such a higher melting point than buttercream, especially if you live in a warmer country. So you've got a little bit longer when your cake's on display before it starts to melt than you have, say, a buttercream cake. So please enjoy, and just enjoy the Ganache and enjoy chocolate.